The desert wind had stopped completely that August night in 1887, which any seasoned prospector will tell you means something wicked is coming. I'd been tracking a silver vein through the Diabolo Canyon for 3 weeks, my mule packed with equipment, my Winchester never leaving my side. That's when I found the camp, or what remained of it. 4 bedrolls arranged in a perfect circle, a coffee pot still warm on dead embers, supplies untouched. But no men, no blood, no tracks leading away. The silence pressed against my eardrums like being underwater. My mule refused to move another step, ears pinned flat against her skull, nostrils flaring at something I couldn't see. Then I noticed the scratches on the canyon wall, dozens of them, carved deep into the red rock face. They formed words, though the hand that made them must have been shaking violently. "It watches from nowhere." That's when I heard my own voice calling my name from somewhere deep in the canyon, though my lips hadn't moved and I was utterly alone. My name is Samuel Garrett, and what I'm about to share happened to me in the Diabolo Canyon along the Arizona-New Mexico border. This isn't folklore passed down through generations or campfire tales meant to spook children. This happened to me, and the scars, both on my body and my mind, prove every word is gospel truth. Before I take you into that hell, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button, because this channel survives on folks like you who appreciate real accounts of the strange and terrifying West. Smash that like button if you've got the stomach for what's coming. And most importantly, drop a comment telling me what country and city you're watching from. I want to know this story is reaching people who understand that some truths are too terrible to ignore. Now settle in. Kill the lights if you dare. What I witnessed in that canyon changed everything I thought I knew about what walks this earth alongside us. I approached that camp with my Winchester raised, every nerve in my body screaming to turn back. The fire pit sat in the exact center of 4 bedrolls, each positioned at perfect compass points: north, south, east, west. No cowboy arranges his camp like that. We bunched together for warmth and protection, not spread out like some ritual circle. The coffee pot was still warm when I touched it, maybe 15 minutes cold at most. I lifted it and found the coffee inside hadn't even finished settling. These men had been here moments ago, but where in God's name had they gone? I called out into the canyon. My voice echoed back 7 times before dying in the rock walls. Nobody answered. My mule, Sadie, kept pulling against her rope, desperate to bolt. I'd had that animal for 6 years, and she'd faced down rattlesnakes, mountain lions, and Apache raids without flinching. Whatever had her spooked wasn't natural. The supplies told a strange story. 4 saddlebags remained, personal effects still inside. Pocket watches, photographs of wives and children, even gold coins. No drifter abandons gold. I found a journal in one bag belonging to a Thomas Hendricks from Tombstone. The last entry was dated that very day. August 14th, 1887. Third night in Diabolo Canyon. The silver vein runs deep here, just like the old Mexican said. But Martinez keeps talking about the watching. Says he feels eyes on him when he works the rock face. I told him it's just nerves, but truth is, I feel it too. The entry ended there, mid-page, the pencil lying beside the journal as if Hendricks had been interrupted mid-sentence. I turned to study those scratches on the canyon wall more carefully. They weren't carved with any tool. The marks were too irregular, too desperate. Someone had clawed those words into solid rock with their bare fingers. I ran my hand over the deepest grooves. The stone was still warm, and when I pulled my fingers back, they came away wet with something dark. Not blood exactly, but something thicker, almost like tree sap, but with a chemical smell that burned my nostrils. That's when I noticed the tracks, or rather, the complete absence of them. The desert floor around the camp showed boot prints coming in, 4 sets of them, but nothing leading out. It was as if these men had simply evaporated into the air. I've tracked Apache through solid rock country, followed wounded bears through streams, but I'd never seen anything like this. The sun was dropping fast toward the canyon rim, maybe 30 minutes of daylight left. Every instinct told me to mount up and ride hard for anywhere else. But I'd spent 3 weeks getting here, And that silver vein was real. I could see the promising glint of ore in the exposed rock face where these men had been working. I made my decision. I'd stay one night, keep my fire burning bright, and my rifle loaded. Come morning, if these men didn't return, I'd report the camp to the marshal in Silver City. I gathered wood, built up a proper fire, and settled in with my back against a boulder where I could watch the entire canyon floor. As darkness fell, I heard it for the first time. A sound like wind moving through the canyon, except the air was perfectly still. And underneath that impossible wind, something that might have been breathing. Full darkness came to Diabolo Canyon like a black curtain dropping on a stage. The stars appeared overhead, thousands of them, but their light seemed to stop at the canyon rim. Down where I sat, the firelight created a small bubble of visibility that extended maybe 15 feet in any direction. Beyond that, nothing but absolute darkness that felt solid, almost physical. I fed the fire constantly, burning through my wood supply faster than smart. But something about that darkness made me want the flames high and bright. Sadie had gone quiet, which worried me more than her earlier panic. She stood rigid at the edge of the firelight, staring out into the black canyon with her ears swiveling like she was tracking something moving out there. Around midnight, I heard the voices. At first, I thought other prospectors had arrived, their conversation carrying down the canyon walls. But as I listened closer, the words made no sense. It was English, definitely English, but the sentences ran backward or sideways, familiar words arranged in ways that hurt my brain to process. Then I recognized one of the voices. It was mine, speaking words I'd never said in my exact tone and cadence. The voice was discussing the silver vein, describing its depth and quality to someone or something else. I clamped my mouth shut and didn't make a sound, but my voice kept talking out there in the darkness. I grabbed a burning branch from the fire and thrust it toward where the voice seemed to originate. The flames illuminated nothing but empty air and rock. But my voice stopped immediately, cut off mid-word. In the sudden silence, I heard something else. Footsteps, boots on stone, walking in a slow circle around my camp, always staying just beyond the firelight's reach. The footsteps multiplied. 2 sets became 4, then 8, then dozens. They walked in perfect synchronization, creating an echo that surrounded me completely. I spun in place, rifle raised, but saw nothing. The abandoned bedrolls lay exactly where they'd been. The coffee pot sat cold by the dead fire pit. Everything was still, except it wasn't. When I looked at the scratched words on the canyon wall, they'd changed. New letters had been added, carved deep into the rock while I'd been distracted by the voices. The message now read, "It watches from nowhere, it speaks with our mouths, it takes us one by one." My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my rifle. I'd fought in the Apache campaigns, stared down road agents and claimed jumpers. But this was different. This was wrong in a fundamental way that made my skin crawl and my vision blur at the edges. I wanted to run, but Sadie was my only way out, and she remained frozen at the firelight's edge. That's when the humming started, low and resonant, like 1,000 voices harmonizing in a minor key. It came from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating through the ground beneath my boots and the air in my lungs. The sound had weight to it, pressure, and it was getting louder. The fire began to dance and flicker, though there was still no wind. I saw the first figure at the northern edge of camp. It stood just beyond the firelight, a shadow slightly darker than the surrounding darkness. Human-shaped but wrong in proportions I couldn't quite identify. It didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there watching me with attention I could feel like physical touch. Then a second figure appeared to the east, then south, then west. 4 watchers at the compass points, mirroring the arrangement of the abandoned bedrolls. And as I watched in horror, they began to step forward into the light. The first thing I noticed as they stepped into my firelight was their faces, or what should have been faces. Each figure wore the features of a different man, but the faces didn't move right. They hung slack and loose like poorly fitted masks, and the eyes didn't blink, just stared with an intensity that made my chest tighten and my breathing go ragged. I recognized one of them from the photograph I'd found in the saddlebag. Thomas Hendricks, the journal writer from Tombstone. He wore the same checked shirt and leather vest from his tintype picture, but the man standing before me wasn't alive in any sense I understood. His skin had a waxy quality, and when the firelight hit him from certain angles, I could see straight through him to the canyon wall beyond. They moved closer in perfect unison, each taking identical steps at the exact same moment. Their boots made no sound on the stone now. I raised my Winchester and aimed at the closest figure, my finger tight on the trigger. But something stopped me from firing. A voice in my head that wasn't my own, telling me that bullets meant nothing here, that I was already caught in something I couldn't fight or escape. The figure wearing Hendrix's face opened its mouth. What came out wasn't a voice, but that same impossible wind sound I'd heard earlier, mixed with something that might have been words in a language no human throat was meant to speak. The other three figures joined in, creating a chorus that made my teeth ache and my vision swim with black spots. I stumbled backward and nearly fell into my fire. The heat snapped me out of whatever trance their voices had put me in. I fired my rifle straight up into the air, the report echoing off the canyon walls like thunder. The figures stopped advancing. For a moment, they just stood there, those slack faces tilting slightly, as if considering this new development. Then they began to change. The faces rippled and reformed, and suddenly I was looking at 4 versions of myself. Same beard, same hat, same scar on my left cheek from a knife fight in El Paso. They smiled at me with my own smile, but there was nothing human behind those eyes. They were trying to understand me, I realized, trying to become me. Sadie finally broke. She reared up with a scream that was almost human and bolted into the darkness, her rope snapping like thread. I heard her hooves on stone for maybe 10 seconds before the sound cut off completely, as if she'd run straight off the edge of the world. I was alone now, truly alone, with these things that wore faces like clothes. The one directly in front of me, the one that had been Hendrix, spoke in my voice. Perfect mimicry down to the slight Texas drawl I'd picked up in my youth. Samuel Garrett, it said, my name sounding wrong coming from that loose-fitting face. You shouldn't have come here. This canyon belongs to what came before, what's always been here, waiting beneath the silver and stone. I backed toward the canyon wall, keeping my fire between me and the figures. My hands found those carved warnings in the rock, and I felt something else, a gap in the stone, narrow but deep. A crack in the canyon wall I hadn't noticed in daylight. Cool air flowed from it, and with that air came a smell of deep earth and something ancient. The figures moved toward me again, all 4 wearing my face now, speaking in chorus with my voice. Stay with us, Samuel. We're so lonely out here. We've been alone so long, taking travelers piece by piece, learning how to be human again. But we forget so quickly. We need fresh faces, fresh voices. Stay and teach us. Stay and become part of the watching. Their hands reached for me, and I saw their fingers were too long, the joints bending in too many places. I had one chance. I grabbed a burning branch from my fire and dove backward into that crack in the canyon wall. The crack in the canyon wall was barely wide enough for my shoulders. I scraped through sideways, my burning branch held out in front of me, casting wild shadows on stone walls that pressed in from both sides. Behind me, I heard those things trying to follow, their bodies making wet sliding sounds as they attempted to compress themselves into the narrow space. The passage angled downward sharply, and I half slid, half fell for what felt like 50 feet. The air grew colder with each foot of descent, and my torch illuminated strange markings on the walls. Not the desperate scratches from above, but deliberate carvings, ancient and weathered. Symbols that predated any native tribe I knew of. Geometric patterns that seemed to shift and writhe when I looked at them directly. I landed hard on a floor of smooth stone, the impact knocking the wind from my lungs. My torch had gone out in the fall, plunging me into absolute darkness. I fumbled for matches in my vest pocket, my hands shaking so badly I dropped the first 3. The 4th finally caught, and I relit my branch to find myself in a cavern that stretched beyond the reach of my meager light. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above me, but the walls were covered in those same strange carvings. And bones. Human bones arranged in patterns along the base of the walls. Skulls stacked in precise pyramids, ribs laid out in spiraling designs. I counted at least 40 skulls in the section I could see. 40 people who'd found their way down here and never left. But these weren't recent deaths. The bones were ancient, some crumbling to dust at the slightest air movement. This place had been a tomb for centuries, maybe longer, and in the center of the cavern stood a structure that made my blood run cold. An altar of black stone, its surface stained with substances I didn't want to identify, and sitting atop it was a mirror, not a normal mirror. This was a sheet of polished obsidian the size of a wagon wheel, its surface perfectly black and reflective. But what it reflected wasn't the cavern around me. I could see the night sky in that mirror, stars wheeling in patterns I didn't recognize. And moving among those stars were shapes that hurt my eyes to look at directly. I heard movement behind me and spun around. The 4 figures had made it through the passage, but down here in this ancient place they'd dropped all pretense of humanity. Their borrowed faces had sloughed off completely, revealing what lay beneath. Forms that were simultaneously solid and ethereal. Geometries that my mind refused to process properly. They were older than the bones in this cavern, older than the canyon itself. One of them reached toward the obsidian mirror, and when its appendage, I couldn't call it a hand, touched the surface, the entire cavern shuddered. The carved symbols on the walls began to glow with a sickly phosphorescent light. And I understood in a moment of terrible clarity what this place was. It was a doorway, a thin spot between worlds, and these things had been trapped here for eons, only able to reach through in limited ways, taking people who wandered too close, wearing their faces like disguises, trying to remember what it meant to be real. The obsidian mirror rippled like water, and something on the other side pushed against it. I saw appendages, countless writhing forms, all pressing against that black surface from the other side. The 4 figures around me weren't alone. They were just the scouts, the advance party, and they were trying to open the door wider. I had to destroy that mirror. Every instinct I possessed screamed this truth at me. I didn't know if it would trap these things forever or just slow them down, but I knew with absolute certainty that letting them open that doorway fully would be catastrophic. I grabbed the largest rock I could lift with one hand, keeping my torch in the other, and I charged toward that altar of black stone, those ancient horrors moving to intercept me, their voices rising in that wind-sound chorus that threatened to burst my eardrums and crack my sanity like an eggshell. I never made it to the altar. One of those things intercepted me 3 feet from the obsidian mirror, and when it touched my arm, I felt cold that went beyond temperature. It was the cold of deep space, of absolute nothingness, and it burned worse than any fire. I screamed and swung my torch wildly, the flames passing through its form without effect. But the light from the fire did something. Where the flames touched that writhing geometry, it recoiled, its form flickering like a bad dream losing coherence. I understood then, not heat, but light itself caused them pain. They were creatures of absolute darkness, of the spaces between stars, and direct flame was agony to them. I thrust my torch forward with both hands, forgetting about the rock I'd been carrying. The creatures fell back, their wind voices rising to a shriek that shattered stalactites from the invisible ceiling above. Stone rained down around me, and one jagged piece the size of my fist struck the obsidian mirror's edge with a sharp crack. The sound that crack made wasn't natural. It was musical and terrible, like a church bell cast in hell. The mirror's surface rippled violently, and whatever had been pressing against it from the other side suddenly pushed harder. Cracks spiderwebbed across the black glass, glowing with that same sickly light as the symbols on the walls. The 4 creatures abandoned their attack on me and rushed toward the mirror, trying to hold it together with their impossible forms. I realized they weren't trying to break it. They were trying to preserve it. The mirror breaking would trap them here, cut them off from whatever realm they'd come from. That's when I understood what I had to do, even if it meant bringing this entire cavern down on my head. I grabbed my rifle from where it had fallen and fired directly into the center of the obsidian mirror. The bullet struck with that same terrible musical note, and the entire sheet of black glass exploded outward in 1,000 fragments. The creatures screamed, actually screamed, a sound that was finally terribly human, and began to dissolve like smoke in a strong wind. But I'd miscalculated. The mirror hadn't been holding something back. It had been holding something in. The cavern itself began to collapse, the ancient stone finally giving way after centuries of supporting this unnatural space. The carved symbols on the walls flared brilliant white, then went dark one by one like dying stars. I ran for the narrow passage, my torch long since dropped and extinguished. I climbed through absolute darkness, hands and knees bleeding on the sharp stone, the roar of collapsing rock filling my ears. I could feel the air pressure changing, tons of stone falling behind me, chasing me up through that narrow crack toward the surface. I emerged into the canyon just as the ground beneath the camp gave way. The fire pit, the bedrolls, the abandoned supplies, everything dropped into a sinkhole that opened like a hungry mouth. I scrambled backward on my hands and feet, watching as the entire floor of Diabolo Canyon collapsed into the void beneath, taking all evidence of those 4 missing men with it. The collapse stopped as suddenly as it started. Dust filled the air, thick as fog, and when it finally settled, I found myself sitting on a narrow ledge of intact ground at the canyon's edge. Where the camp had been, where I'd spent that terrible night, there was now just a massive pit dropping away into darkness. And in the silence that followed, I heard nothing. No wind voices, no footsteps, no humming. Just the normal sounds of the desert night. Coyotes in the distance, the rustle of a breeze through sagebrush. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time since entering this cursed place. I spent 2 days walking out of Diabolo Canyon on foot, rationing the canteen of water I'd managed to grab before everything went to hell. Sadie was gone. I never found any trace of her, and I hope somehow she made it out and found her way to some ranch where she lived out her days in peace. I reported the collapsed mine and the missing men to the marshal in Silver City, told him about the cave-in and the 4 prospectors I'd found evidence of. I didn't mention the rest. Who would believe it? I barely believed it myself, and I'd lived through every moment. The marshal sent a team out to investigate, but they found the canyon entrance had collapsed completely. Too dangerous to excavate, they decided, and the whole area was marked as unstable ground on future mining maps. Those 4 men, Thomas Hendricks and whoever traveled with him, they're still listed as missing, disappeared without a trace in the summer of 1887. Their families never got closure, never got bodies to bury. Sometimes I think about writing to them, telling them what really happened. But what comfort would that bring? Better they imagine their men died quick in a cave-in than know the truth about what wears human faces in the deep places of the world. I never went back to prospecting, sold my equipment, took a job as a clerk in a Denver haberdashery where the strangest thing I deal with is difficult customers arguing over hat prices. People think I'm peculiar, jumping at shadows, keeping every lamp in my boarding room burning through the night. Let them think what they want. I know what I saw in Diabolo Canyon. I know what's been waiting beneath the silver and stone since before humans walked this continent. Patient and hungry, wearing our faces and learning our voices. That mirror is broken now, and I pray it stays broken. But sometimes in the deepest part of night, I hear that wind sound in my dreams, and I wake up wondering if I really trapped them down there, or if I just made them angry. If you ever find yourself in the desert territories, and you come across a canyon where the wind sounds wrong, and the silence feels too heavy, where abandoned camps sit with coffee still warm in the pot, turn around. Ride hard in the opposite direction. Some silver veins aren't worth finding, and some places in this West aren't meant for human eyes. I learned that lesson in blood and terror, and I'm still paying the price in sleepless nights and memories that won't fade. God help anyone else who goes looking for easy riches in Diabolo Canyon, because I won't be there to warn them, and those things beneath the earth are patient, so terribly patient, and they're always watching.